Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very pleased to have with me Dane Deutsch, and let me tell you about Dane. He is a seasoned leadership coach and a coach with passion for character-driven leadership. With years of experience guiding individuals and organizations to cultivate integrity, courage, and empathy, he has become a trusted voice in leadership development. His unique concept, the Tricycle Effect, provides a practical framework for leaders seeking sustainable growth, both professionally and personally. Dane Deutsch is a character-building expert with over 40 years' experience in leadership, coaching, technology, and military service. As the founder of Leadership and Management Development in Character, Dane empowers leaders to build trust, integrity, loyalty, and lead with integrity. As a former U.S. Air Force officer and IT specialist, Dane has led large teams and implemented breakthrough technologies. Through his book, Coachability and the Tricycle Effect, he shares proven strategies to help leaders balance success with character. From success to significance, leadership strategies is going to be our theme today. Again, from success to significance, leadership strategies. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Dane Deutsch. Dane, so happy to have you on today.
Hey, really happy to have you be here and be able to spend my time with you and the audience and hopefully add some real value to them.
Awesome. So we always start out with two simple questions before we get to the main meat of the matter. And that is, first, tell everybody, where do you live? Where do you call home right now?
Yeah, so right now I'm in Northwest Wisconsin. And as of right now, it's 34 degrees out and it's snowing, and it's the 25th of November. So it's the beginning of Thanksgiving and Christmas season. Yeah.
And when this comes out in January, it will be even colder.
Well, yeah, we'll probably have a few 20-degree below days up here.
That's
yeah.
exactly
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Exactly why I don't live in Wisconsin.
Yep.
So I gave just a little bit about where you are, what you do today, but I always find that it's really helpful for the audience to understand the journey that led you to where you are today, the different twists and turns, successes and failures. So briefly, kind of touch on some of the highlights of your journey.
Sure, happy to do that. I grew up in Venezuela for 4 years when I was 7 to 11, and those are my most memorable years when I was younger. And then my dad retired in Minnesota, so I went back to Minnesota and we settled down there. I graduated from high school there. And then I went to the University of Wisconsin-Superior as well as Bemidji State University in Minnesota to get my degree in Phy Ed and Health. And I went back to Superior in order to get my commission in the Air Force. And so I became an officer from Superior, Wisconsin, and primarily focused on IT. If you took calculus in college, you got thrown into IT right away.
Yeah,
so
right.
I wasn't a pilot, I was an IT guy. But interestingly enough, it was a great foundation for all the things that I have done since then, both in starting other businesses as well as the fact that almost everything we do today has an IT element in it, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. didn't go to college until I was in my late 40s and graduated 50. And the thing that helped me to always keep propelling in my career was the fact that I started working in the late 70s and the computers were just coming out. And the first
Yep.
Mac was just coming out. And so I was great at shorthand as a secretary, but not so much as a typist. And so when the computers came out and I found they had a delete key,
Yeah.
my world changed. And that really led me to just always embrace the changes in technology, not to be fearful of them. And I think now in this very rapidly changing world with technology, that's a good insight for most people to have, that, don't fear the unknown as much. Try to see how you can make it work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. After getting my commission in the Air Force, they put me in IT, and my first actual base was in Florida, in Fort
Mm.
Walton Beach at Eglin Air Force Base. I worked at Hurlburt Field and Tactical Air Warfare Center. But I soon got kind of bored with that job, and I volunteered to go to Turkey.
Oh, wow.
So I took my family overseas to Turkey. We spent 5 years there. My last 2 years, I worked for President Reagan's communications director out of the
Mm.
White House. And it was an amazing time. At one point, I had almost 1,500 people scattered from Iraq to Istanbul and from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean that I was responsible for running all the IT for the whole country. But in tying together what you just said about, hey, technology has evolved and all of that kind of thing, and over the last 42 years of having been in IT, it was an amazing start because there was no internet back in the
Yeah,
80s.
there was none.
And I was in Turkey. That's the Asiatic side, of off of Europe. And we put in the first internet capability in Turkey for all of NATO, Middle East, Mediterranean, and Europe. And it was called ARPANET then.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't called
Wow.
internet. And we
Yeah.
put in the first email systems, we put in the first digital telephone switch. So we've come a long ways. And we were all wireless in the 80s. Probably, I could safely say that we were 30 years ahead of technology back here in the United States.
Yeah.
So I got a good vision of where we were going and what it was capable of doing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it also provided me some really good foundation for all those struggles that you talked about too. And I've learned to hit the delete key a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
glad it's there.
The interesting thing too, and then we will get into the meat of this, but I remember whenever I worked for UPS for 27 years of my last job, a career job before I retired, and it was a great time because UPS just really introduced technology in
Mhm.
83, and from 83 to 2000 or whatever, they put $30 million into technology because data is really more important than your packages. People just want you to know that. And but the interesting thing, one of the things that I was a lead and business owner for, was the technology where some of the companies, to be able to ship your packages from that company, they used this thing called teleship, was a telephone, and had the modem, that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
different. And so I was to introduce to them this new internet phone. And all the people kept on saying, "Well, no, my employees will play on the internet." And this was not this. Your phone would have been better. The current phones we have now would have been stronger than this thing was. But it was interesting to try to convince, and a lot of those companies that struggled with that concept, that their employees would be distracted too much with the internet, those are gone. Those companies are all
Yeah.
gone.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk
Yeah.
about leadership and success
Okay.
to significance. So, how did your personal experiences really shape your leadership philosophy of, the tricycle effect? And
Sure. When I retired from the Air Force and we came back from Turkey, I had no job. I had no money in the bank. We had 4 kids,
oh,
and we were really starting from scratch.
mm,
And my mom had actually started a business and was an entrepreneur. and very successful. So I thought, oh, we'll start our own business. So we did. And we started our gymnastics training center, professional gymnastics club, and we've had that going now for 35 years.
Wow.
But it was in a little town where our family was. And so high caliber clubs like that are generally in big cities, right?
Yeah.
We couldn't actually live off of what we were making in the gym at the time. So I started an IT company focused primarily on cybersecurity, bringing what I had from the Air Force into the commercial sector, right? Knowing
Yeah.
that IT was going to play a big role in the future.
Sure.
It was a great decision. And we had a lot of really great customers, and it was a great experience, but it also taught me that struggle between using technology, balancing life, and all
Yeah.
the rest, right? Because there's a lot
Yeah.
with it. You can get strung out on technology, and you can sit behind the screens, but building relationships and getting back to what really counts between humans was key.
Yeah.
And then after I sold my IT company 5 years ago, I actually had started as an instructor at a university teaching cyber technology ethics. So in between the military and gymnastics and our IT company and my teaching at the university with character ethics, not philosophical ethics, and cyber
Hmm.
technology, it gave me this idea that, hey, we need to have some method of being able to wrap our minds around what really gives us a foundation in life.
Yeah.
And that really boiled back to the whole idea of character
Yeah.
and character ethics, right? So I thought, all right, I got to have something to really paint an image in people's minds. So I used the tricycle. I started out originally with just a three-legged stool, right?
Yes. Hmm.
And it doesn't move. It has no movement. There's no
Hmm.
dynamic entity or component to it, right? So I thought, all right, I'll use a tricycle. It still has three things, right? Three wheels.
Exactly. And
So
if
if you
one
think of
doesn't
that,
work, you fall over. Same as
and
a stool.
yeah, exactly. And we're all, even though we're old, we're just big kids.
Yeah.
The personality we had when we were 3 to 7 years old, and we'd watched this in our gym for decades, is still the same personality we have when we're adults, right? And when we're older.
Mhm.
We can cover it up better. We can put on a facade. We can make it look like we're better, but really,
Yeah.
we're still the same personality.
Yeah.
But our character, that can change, that can
Hmm.
grow, and we can actually develop character habits. So in the image of the tricycle, what I did was I created this image that, hey, the front wheel on the tricycle, and all of us, since we're big kids, going back to our youth, have almost all of us ridden tricycles or big wheels, right?
Right.
Where that big
Exactly.
wheel is in the front,
Hmm.
and then you have the two smaller wheels in the back. Well, the big wheel in the front, I call the character skills wheel. Things like trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, loyalty, empathy. That's a big one these
It
days, right?
is. It
Integrity.
is.
The back two wheels are about the same size on a tricycle that's well built at least. And one of them is the technical, and we all kind of know that. Can you type on a keyboard? Can you operate a phone? Can you bake a cake? Can you make your bed? Whatever those technical skills are. On the other wheel, I call that the people skills wheel. So things like communication, teamwork, leadership, those are all so important. Communications. And those two wheels should be balanced. There's a gymnastics term, right? Balance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And unfortunately, I think, probably the reason you and I do what we do today is because in most cases, they are not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then the seat is the seat of courage.
Ah,
If you think about the
confidence.
person in the seat, the handlebars are connected to that front wheel. The pedals are connected to the front wheel. So you get your momentum and your direction in life from your character
Mhm.
skills wheel. But
Yeah,
it's the courage to make the right decision at the right time for the right reason, right?
exactly.
So yeah, most people today are probably driving around on a tricycle that has a huge technical wheel in the back,
Exactly.
a smaller people skill, and an almost non-existent character wheel in the front.
Yeah.
Not a very balanced ride. And it's
No,
tough to go
no.
very far like that.
Yeah.
So that
And
was the
and
image.
and as you were saying that, it just made me think, that seat, the courage. And I always say, courage is what builds confidence. And so if you are unbalanced, then you're going to fall off the seat every time, and your courage is constantly going to be challenged. Your self-confidence is always challenged.
Absolutely. And so that was the image, and it's easy to paint that in people's minds, and when they walk away, they remember that image. So I use that,
Mhm.
even though we're all adults, some people think that's that's a kid tricycle kind of image, and you really probably couldn't bring that into the professional world. But in reality, that's exactly how we operate. So that's how I started. Well, if we think about success and significance, most of the time everybody's talking about success and they're talking about leadership. Well, it's interesting that John Maxwell says that, everything rises and falls on leadership. But he also says that leadership rises and falls on character. And we don't
Absolutely.
hear that very often, but that is so powerful. If we could just really hook back into that again, personally, for each of us in our personal growth and development and leadership journeys, we could change the world in a way that would be amazing.
Yeah.
There are so many struggles and challenges out there today. If we can get that moral compass going, right? Find that true north and make sure we're striking the true north, we're going to find a lot more, not only success, but significance. A lot of times I say, well, success is when you add value to yourself. But significance is when I add value to someone else.
Absolutely.
And to others, right? So with the tricycle effect, the goal is, yes, I need to add value to myself. I need to make sure I'm growing, especially with my character skills. And we could call those character skills character habits too, right? But once I've got that foundation laid with character, I should be able to springboard off of that and add value to other people in significant ways.
So true, so true. And, I think the folks out there that hire people should understand that most of the interview should be spent on understanding the character and the core values of the individuals you're bringing in. You can teach them that back wheel of technical. You can even inspire them on the people skills.
Yep.
But the character, that's something that has been imprinted in them. And so you need to be right on that one.
And character, actually, in the old days, the whole idea of character with printing presses and even Chinese, I think they talk about that as being the imprint, the mark, right?
Yeah.
What is our character? Our character is what actually precedes us in a lot of cases, because people are watching our behavior, and our character is who we really are. Our behavior is a representation of what we really are inside, right? I like the idea that you talked about an interview, because I used to do some mock interviews for a school to help the people, be able to get out and get their jobs. And too often those resumes were all about the look and not the real content, right?
Yeah.
So I had said I wasn't going to do any more because I didn't think they were prepping the students well for the real world, since I was a CEO of 5 different companies, and I didn't want to put them through that maze again. And they finally talked me into one more time, and I said, okay, but if this doesn't go better, I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, I sat down. The first person I had was a gal who had been in the work industry for over 25 years. And I looked at her resume, and there was a 19-year gap in her resume. So that was the red flag, right? It told me, hey, ask a question about her work history. So I did. And she said, well, I'd rather not tell you. I said, really? I said, did you go to jail? I mean, what was the deal? And so I'm like, okay, how else could I frame this? Okay, I tell you what, just tell me what your thoughts are in terms of what you did in those 19 years, right? Don't tell me all the details. Just give me this idea. Were you a mom, a stay-at-home mom? Or what did you do? And she said, I can't tell you. And I said, okay, let's stop the interview. I said, now look, tell me why you can't tell me. Well, they told me I wasn't supposed to tell you. I said, who is they? These are the people prepping you for the interview, right? I'm like, okay, so tell me what the 19 years were. She said, okay. She kind of hung her head. She said, I was a forklift driver at a major multi-million-dollar global company. I said, a forklift driver?
Oh my
That
God.
means that nothing moves in that company unless there's a forklift driver to move it. You were a key linchpin to the whole success of that company. Why would they tell you to get rid of 19 years of forklift driving? That tells me a lot about your work ethic and everything else. She goes, really? I said, yeah, absolutely. So, too often we're all about the looks, the technical stuff, but we're not really focused on what really makes us up. 19 years at one company, that's a long time. good
Yeah,
longevity,
loyalty.
shows loyalty. Oh
Hmm.
yeah, we start
You
talking
have
about
to
all the
be
character
timely on
must have cared because she didn't get fired,
hmm.
I mean, all those
Yeah.
things. Absolutely. So the character was what really came out from those 19 years, and it was a blank space on her resume.
Yeah.
So
And she
how many
must have been
people?
really good at it, or they would have switched her to another position.
Absolutely. She was.
Oh,
And
dear
so I
me.
said, you got to put that 19 years back on there. Do not be afraid to put that on there. Don't be embarrassed about it. That's your strength.
Yeah.
That has been you for 19 years. You want to tell people why that counted for you and what a difference it made for the company you work for. So
Hmm.
I think too often people are thinking about the look of things, right? I love it
Yeah.
that Abraham Lincoln said, the tree is your character, but the shadow is your your
Oh,
reputation.
nice. Yeah.
And we don't want to hire people off our resumes just based on reputation. We need to know what their real character is, right? And so
Hmm.
that's the whole purpose of the tricycle effect is
Yeah.
get back to how do we build those character habits and how do we hire for character if you're talking about people who are hiring, right? And train
Hmm.
for the technical. Because you're
Yeah.
exactly right, Vicki. We can train technical, no problem. But getting them to establish good character habits and character skills is that's the biggest challenge.
So let's talk about then some key traits that every leader should be able to cultivate to ensure that they have that long-term success. Because, just like anything, you have to practice it, you have to live it to get better at it. It's like that tennis player. They hit that ball, the same ball over and
Yeah.
over again, the basketball player, the golfer,
Yep.
you
The
know,
gymnast.
the gymnast, right? You
Yeah.
have to on that balance beam. You've
Oh
done it
yeah.
how many times?
4 inches, right?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
So talk about that because I think, that's where also a lot of companies get it wrong, where they see, oh, you're really good at the skills, and so I'm going to make you a manager.
Right.
And they forget that they now have put them in leadership
Right.
and they don't train them on that piece or they don't develop them.
Yes, develop is a great word, or help them grow, right? I
Yes,
mean, that's a big
yes.
part of it. There's lots of myths around character. I mean, I think the word ethics has been kind of misconstrued because character doesn't necessarily mean ethics in itself. But character ethics is all about living with trustworthiness, respect, responsibility. Think
Mhm.
about it. And character skills is something you can work on. That's why I term it skills on the spokes of
Mhm.
that front wheel and the character wheel, right? But if you want to be more respectful, you practice respect. You want to be more caring, you practice care, right? You want to be
Yeah.
more trustworthy, you practice trust. But we don't want to talk about those things because that's one of the taboo myths of character education. If people could just open themselves up to being able to think of character as skills and habits that they can develop. Oh
Right.
my goodness, life changes in such a powerful way. Let me give you a good example of this. There actually is a research company out there called KRW International out of Minneapolis and St. Paul that did the work, the research to prove, no, let me reframe that, to demonstrate and show, okay, that the CEOs with high level of character skills and habits actually get a better return
Yeah.
on their assets and the value of their companies is much better. But of course, you've got all these other things that go along with it, right? Better engagement with the teammates. Everyone's caring for one another, so customers want to come there. Costco was a great example of that in this KRW CEO founder Fred Keel's book, Return on Character, was just so powerful.
Hmm.
And what these CEOs can really do to transform their company. And in turn, that ripple effect then goes out to the families, to the communities, to the other organizations that they touch and that they work with. So that's one myth that I've really worked hard in this coachability book to be able to break through is that character is something we do need to talk about. We do need to
Hmm.
study. We do need to practice as a skill and we need to acquire as a habit.
Absolutely. So then how can aspiring leaders maintain integrity while navigating the challenges of the business environment? And we're a global world now. So when you get into other countries, um, the rules sometimes are different if we'll put it kind of very, very simply. So how can those leaders maintain that integrity?
Well, I mentioned at the very beginning that I grew up in Venezuela. Okay.
Well, that's a good
So,
country to talk about this. There you
but at the
go.
same token, I spent 5 years in Turkey. My wife
Oh,
would go back to Turkey in a heartbeat
no.
because if you get outside of the metropolitan areas like Izmir, Istanbul, Ankara, the capital, 15 minutes outside, you're going back like 100, 150 years
Yeah.
here in the United States. Your handshake is your word. That's your
Mm-hmm.
bond.
Yeah.
I could meet a Turk and 15 minutes later, they would lay their life down for me. It's an
Mm-hmm.
amazing transformation when you start to see that the traditions and the family and the things that actually hold our cultures together are so powerful. But we've lost them in the hustle and bustle and the chasing after shiny objects and our reputation instead of who we really are inside.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a couple of things that I bring out in my book that really talk about how can a leader be authentic or genuine? And number one is humility.
Yeah.
Very few CEOs are going to talk about being humble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a great example of that is when I got my job in Turkey, I was only a 2-year captain. I normally as a colonel that sat in that seat. But my boss came out of the White House and he had heard about me and came over and interviewed me. And he said, I need somebody that can actually operate well, but lead teams in a way that will help us get to be number one. And we did. And so the chief that I had, my senior ranking NCO, the first day on my job, he called me into his office and he said,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to be like the last chief of maintenance or are you going to let us do our job? I was
Ah.
like, whoa. Now that was an interesting question because he really called me
Mm-hmm.
out. And I
Yeah.
said, you know what, chief? Here's the deal. Your job is to take care of the mission. You take care of the technical things. My job is to take care of our people. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did for 2 years. And we never had a red outage anywhere throughout the entire country of Turkey the whole
Awesome.
time. And it was
Awesome.
because they took care of the mission, but I took care of them. And I spent time on the sites, and it took them a long time to believe that they could really trust me, that I actually was there to see how they were doing and not to headhunt, right?
Mm.
So I would go and eat their food, find out if it's any good. I'd go find out, oh, haven't had a ping pong ball on this remote communication site for 6 months. The sauna hasn't worked for a year. Nobody's paid any attention to the quality of life that these people are,
Mm.
spending their time in. And so that's all I
Yeah.
did. And I'd go home and I'd order all that stuff. They'd get it. Surprise, surprise, right? And the whole morale went up.
Yes.
I mean, our job as a CEO is not to get involved in all the technical, right? Our job is to take care of
Mm-hmm.
our people. Their job is to take care of the mission, right?
Yeah.
And I love it that, I learned in the Air Force very quickly there's a difference between a manager and a leader. And
That's
in my
it.
book, I bring this out that we lead people, but we manage things. Things
Yes,
like
that's right.
processes, procedures,
Mm-hmm.
you know, policies, all those kinds of things, but we lead people. And that's
Yeah.
so very, very important.
That's exactly what I teach too, for sure. And I think it's so important that you call out that the CEOs, are not to get involved in the day to day. It's one thing to know it, but it's whenever a person will lead better when they know that you trust them to do the job you put them in that seat for. And so if you're constantly telling them how to do it, then, people like, well, then you do it. If
Yeah,
you know how to do it better, then you do it. And, that's the CEO's job is to, how can you grow the company? How can you, you know, um, sh- uh, prove to the world that this is a most admired and that you care about your people? Yeah.
that's a great point that you made there. If I could give one piece of advice that I think will transform any company that's listening to our podcast today, it's this. If you're the CEO and you spend your time coaching your people to grow their character, skills, and habits, your company will transform.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it takes humility to realize that's what you have to do and be authentic about it because otherwise they'll see right through it, right? So you have to have gone that journey yourself. And
Hmm.
Fred Keel with KRW, he says, those CEOs are at the top of their curve, like Costco in the past. Those he calls virtuoso CEOs
Yeah.
because they have all of those character skills being demonstrated on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a handshake with an employee, a pat on the back, being out there with their people, but not managing their people, right? We really can't manage people. We can only
No.
lead them, right?
Mhm.
Influence is the key.
Yeah. I found that for a long time, um, the people that worked under me, I actually was able to get them to do more because I found out about their families, I cared about them and fought for them to the upper management to have things different. And a lot of times the upper management held me back from being promoted because I didn't know how to lead right. I was too personal with my people. And yet, whenever they needed the people to do something different according to what they wanted, they asked me to talk with them. And so, that was a great insight for me. And I always say that the best thing about graduating at 50 was, first of all, in school, I knew that yes, this is right. What you're teaching us, I can use. That's, good examples of all that. But also I learned that, I just needed to trust my gut that the things that I was
Yeah.
doing that everybody was saying were not right were actually the right way to do it. And, it's why I do what I do today. So,
That's a great point that you made there. I could walk into any company, ask one of their mid-level managers, quote unquote, and say, how many people do you manage? And they'll generally give me a number, 5 or 10 or 15. Right away, I know that there's no one coaching them on character skills or character habits because they would know I don't manage any people. They would come back and say right away, I don't manage people, I lead people. Now you know you really made a difference in that environment, in that culture.
and I think that one of the reasons why I came out of retirement to do what I do is that I just saw so many companies, they'll hire people, they'll put them in place, but they won't work on the leadership. They won't provide them the mentors or the opportunities to learn from example of people. And so to me, then it's just butts in a seat,
Yeah.
and the opportunity to really grow kind of just is dissipated.
And they're just going day to day. That's an amazing, you and I share something in common right there because you're doing the same thing that I did with my book. You're reaching out to people to make a difference for them in their companies and grow. They're helping them to realize how to grow their companies. In my coachability book, I'm doing the exact same thing. So these are great opportunities to be able to get together and find out that, gee, you and I are not as rare as we think we are.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely. And
getting our voice out there is so important.
yeah, that's why I do this podcast. And I grow from meeting awesome
Yeah.
people like you as well. But my thoughts are, okay, if you're not going to hire me, if you're not going to hire Dane, at least listen to these podcasts. At least have 30 minutes
Yeah.
of growth a day.
Yep.
Jeff Olson, I have an anti-aging business that Jeff Olson owns, and one of his things is you should read 10 pages a day of a book that will help develop your brain, your insights, your character. And
Right.
and that's great advice. And so if you can't read for 30 minutes, at least listen to the podcast.
Yeah, and in my book, at the end of every book, I put a little thing called chalk talk out there, right? As a
Nice.
gymnastics coach, a lot of the kids, they're talking at the chalk box, when they're getting ready to go on the next turn for the bars or whatever it happens to be. And so I'm giving some chalk talk tips on how to be a better communicator, leader, and so forth,
Yeah.
but how to really bring those character skills and habits into play in your personal life. And then after that, I have a little worksheet after each chapter in the book itself. So I didn't leave that alone. So you're not just reading and not applying, right? If we don't
Yeah.
apply what we read or what we learn, it really doesn't become a skill, and then it can't also become a habit. And we need these character skills to turn into character habits so that we actually can change the world.
Awesome. All right. Well, we could probably talk for hours and hours. I've enjoyed this so much, but it is time for me to stop and share my screen that has your contact information. For those that are watching, you will be able to get a screenshot. If you're listening, you know the drill. You should have been taking notes all along. But quickly go grab a paper and pencil. I will read the information of how to contact Dane. But everything will be on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling. So if you haven't, please do subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com website. Again, the website is the tricycleeffect.com, the tricycleeffect.com. On LinkedIn, you can search by his name, Dane Deutsch, and that's Deutsch if you are not familiar with Deutschland. And then YouTube is at Dane Deutsch. I am going to turn it over to Dane right now. He's going to talk to you a little bit about his call to action for today.
Yeah, so at the very bottom, sending the audience to an opt-in page for coachability. The folks out there that are listening to us, your audience, have the opportunity to be able to go and pull down the forward and chapter number 1 for free on my coachability book, just to give them a taste of what I'm talking about in terms of trying to develop these character skills and character habits. So that's the easiest first step if people haven't ever done anything with character. You know, it's interesting because in my class at the university, the students thought they were coming for a philosophical ethics class. And about 6 weeks into it, they realized, oops, this is practical character ethics. And how do you actually learn that? Develop it as a skill, and then make sure you create those habits for yourself. That's inside the book.
Awesome. Well, Dane, thank you so much. As I said, I really enjoyed this. You have great information. We're very much aligned in our thoughts, and it's just been thoroughly enjoyable meeting you today and having our conversation.
Likewise, it was a very big privilege to be able to come on with you, Vicki, and be able to hopefully add some value to your audience that will be practical and long-term as well. So
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
So as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.